Welcome back. New numbers from the Office of Personnel Management show about 8% of senior executive service jobs are empty. More people leaving and fewer people moving up to SES jobs are the reasons. Danny Werfel's managing director and partner at Boston Consulting Group and former acting commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service. Danny, welcome. It's good to see you. What does a healthy pipeline of SESers look like? How should somebody go about developing that?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of different sources for SES. Obviously, you start inside your organization, and you've got up and coming leaders, GS15s, GS14s, and managers that are in training. And it's really important to understand where the talent is in your organization and promote their growth and leadership and get those individuals excited about what they're going to be able to achieve in terms of impact once they ascend to the SES. So you start there, but you also want to look outside the organization as well. And we may not be able to fill all those vacancies you just referenced just inside. And there's huge opportunities to bring people in from the private sector and elsewhere and entice them with the impact you can have in public service at an SES job.
I want to look at the enterprise-wide implications in a moment, but within an organization, not every person that is a member of those groups that you just described is necessarily a candidate to be a member of the SES, are they?
No, I mean, we have programs in the government that work effectively at identifying potential SES candidates. We have something called the SES Candidacy Development Program, where early on I participated in that many years ago, where as a GS14 or as a GS15, you can see what it takes to go through the process and go through the interviews and fill out the forms. And that's one way to determine it. But there are other individuals that don't have to go through the program that can make it to SES. And then you're right, you have individuals that can be important contributors to the government, but may not be the right fit for a leadership position or an SES, and that's okay too. The reality is, though, organizations really have to understand their talent, their pipeline, and the path that these individuals are on so that we're working towards a healthy future for each organization.
What does this look like from an enterprise-wide perspective? What do you think the role of OPM should be moving forward, Danny, to help these organizations build out their SES core?
I think it's got to be a fundamental priority of OPM going forward to think about how do we make agencies, all the agencies have a priority to look at the state of their SES and figure out what needs to be done to close any gaps, whether there's gaps in terms of vacancies, skill gaps, what training do these individuals need, what's their morale, what's their engagement. I mean, in many ways, the SES represents the heart and soul of many of our organizations, and we really have to understand how to bring them to their highest and best performance. And this needs to be a priority of each agency, but also OPM can really help lead the charge, make sure it's understood across human resources offices, across government, that this is an important priority.
I don't know if it was your intent or not, Danny, but reading between the lines there, it sounds to me like you're suggesting that OPM might be the most important or one of the most important organizations to the Biden administration, because what you just outlined there is just the tip of the iceberg regarding what has to change, not just as a result of the Trump administration, but as the result of the change of the workforce over the past 15, 20 years for the new administration. Am I reading too much into what you said there, or do you see this position, the OPM director position, as that important?
You're not reading too much into it. I mean, it sounds obvious sometimes, but sometimes it's important to point out the obvious. But people has to be a huge focus of a high performing government. All the things the future Biden administration is going to want to achieve are going to be dependent on whether they have the right people in place with the right skills and the right tools to get it done, whether it's climate change or immigration or any of the many priorities that he and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris have been talking about. It's not going to get done without the workforce. And how do we make the right investments to empower the workforce to get these things done. It's not just important for the future president. It's important for the American people that their government works well. I've said it time and time again, whether you believe in big government or small government, you want the government to work. And I often tell people, think about that moment you get on the plane, it's about to take off, you're with your family, and you're thinking about those air traffic controllers. And do you want them to have the right training, the right morale, the right circumstances to succeed in their job of keeping you safe? Well, that requires investment in people. And that's the way I want us to be thinking about the government going forward.
Less than a minute left, Danny. What do you think happened to the original intent of the Senior Executive Service, and that was that they would move from agency to agency and sow good government principles throughout the government? That's kind of gone away. What do you think happened? Why do you think that happened?
It's a great question, and I love the point. Like the SES was supposed to be a moving cohort of expert managers that, at a moment's notice, could seize on a particular emerging crisis or priority, and that just never manifested itself. And I think what happened is that we kind of lost sight of that early on, and people got comfortable in their jobs and stayed for 20, 30, 40 years in the same SES job. And many of those people had extraordinary impact and don't want to diminish their service in any way, shape, or form. And it's okay if an SESer stays in seat for 10, 20, 30 years, if that's the right answer. But as part of OPM's future endeavor, they should be thinking about a more mobile SES workforce to make sure we're getting back to that original vision, because as priorities emerge, you want to put your best talent on it.
Danny Werfel, thanks very much as always. Appreciate you being on.